Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand. Jessop's Journal is a collection of powerful, positive, and inspirational stories. It's time for Jessop's Journal.
Hi, I'm Doug Jessop. Welcome to this episode of Jessop's Journal, where we share powerful, positive, and inspirational stories. Today, we're focusing on successful immigration stories. Our first guest has a powerful story of how his abuela, his grandmother, helped influence his entire career.
She was very knowledgeable in herbs and natural remedies. So I saw her helping the community, and that always intrigued me, kind of, and I always want to explore a little bit more about it. And that's probably the beginning of my desire to pursue medicine and helping people.
I love the positive impact that music has on the soul. Mac and the Messenger deliver with the song Summertime.
Oh, your daddy's rich and your mind's good looking.
Hungarian immigrant Chef Imi shares an inspirational story of how food transcends language.
My payback is creating an experience, bring a smile to my guest face.
But first, in the little village that Gustavo Ferrer grew up in, his grandmother was the herbalist. He followed in her footsteps. It's time to sign into Jessop's Journal. In this episode of Jessop's Journal, I have Dr. Gustavo Ferrer. What kind of doctor are you?
I'm a pulmonary and critical care doctor. I'm trained in internal medicine and went for training on lungs and critical care medicine.
You know, there's always somebody in your life that just has an interesting impact. I have a sneaking suspicion it might be your abuela.
That's right. I grew up really close to my grandma's house. My grandma she was highly educated. She read a lot. She spoke French.
Really?
And she wrote poetry. And I think in my passion and curiosity for research and writing and all of that came from her. And I saw her helping people. She was known as kind of the healer of my town, because she was very knowledgeable in many things, but she was very knowledgeable in herbs and natural remedies. So I saw her helping the community, and that always intrigued me, kind of, and I always want to explore a little bit more about it. And that's probably the beginning of my desire to pursue medicine and helping people. Whenever somebody has cough and colds in my hometown, we have a special type of sage that is it grows predominantly in the tropical countries and a lot in Cuba, in the eastern part of Cuba. My grandma used that sage and extracted the concentrated part of the sage and gave it to people with honey for cough. And I've been using this forever.
You're a doctor from Cuba, and you find yourself in a South American country and some crazy stuff happened. You want to tell me that story?
Absolutely, and that's the way that I end up in America. I was working for the United Nations University in South America. I was an incredible time. I was in the middle of the jungle with an incredible team of people from all over the world. We were doing research and we were working every single day, but it was fascinating. In the year 2000, a new president came on board in Venezuela, and Hugo Chavez, and he decided to stop all international research. I decided to come to America. Didn't want to go back to Cuba, and they were, threatening Cubans that were in Venezuela at that time that they would be deported back home and so on. So in my first attempt to leave Venezuela, at the airport, they caught me, and I was waiting for my airplane right before takeoff. They took me to a room, and the next thing I noticed, in the next 15 minutes, I was in prison, and I was getting interrogated left and right. They had confused me with somebody, and they also were saying that if I was one of those Cubans that was trying to leave the country. I ended up in a penitentiary for several days, and I have a good friend that we have agreed to that when I get to America, I will call him back, and so that he knows that I was safe. Leaving Cuba, living extreme regime, it's extremely difficult. And so you gotta handle everything very careful. You have to communicate with this little number of people so that your plans are not torn by them and destroyed. So I was in that process. And my good friend realized that I haven't called him in a few days, and he went on and he found out that I was in prison, in the local prison close to the airport. So by day 5 or 6, I can't remember exactly, they were trying to take me to the state penitentiary. And on my way to the state penitentiary, I was sitting in the back of the car, handcuffed, and they were driving, and all of a sudden I hear that they brake drastically and run to one side, and they opened the door and it started screaming, "Go, go, go, jump, jump!" And I have a SUV next to me, and they pull me with my handcuff and throw the keys.
Gosh.
And and then we ran off. So he managed to get me off the hands of the police. That was a fascinating thing, and we drove around, and he took me back to the airport, and I flew that night to Atlanta, and I landed in Atlanta, and I was lost in the airport for hours, and I couldn't make a phone call in one of those handheld 25 cents phones.
So we're talking a couple years ago. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I was there in the airport, and fascinating thing that happened was trying to get a ticket, and I was speaking with a lady that didn't know anything of English. I did not understand the language at all. And the lady was helping me and take a flight to Miami, or book a flight to Miami. And I only have about $100, and the ticket was about $180. And right behind me was another lady that she was listening to the conversation, and she walked in and she asked me if I was Cuban, and a few questions. How long have you been in the area? And you need some help? And I say, yeah, absolutely. And the lady offered to pay my ticket. She paid my ticket. I offered to pay back, to give the $100. She didn't give me her name or anything like that, and she just told me, just go out there and do something good with your life.
Wow. Wow. So you had a little guardian angel.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, you had, some family members that actually were from America.
That's right. My grandfather, his family originated in Tampa many, many years ago in the 1800s, and they moved from Tampa to Puerto Rico to work at Vieques, at the bay in Puerto Rico. My grandfather from there went to work at Guantanamo Bay in the year 1912.
Really?
Yes, and so my grandpa went to Cuba. So from America to Puerto Rico to Cuba, and he bought land in Cuba, and my family, was born in there. So he has another brother that also did the same kind of trip to Cuba, and so most of the descendants are in the eastern hillsides of Guantanamo.
So when you flew from Atlanta to Miami, did you know anybody there? I mean, were you just kind of going blindly, or did you have somebody to go see?
Kind of 75 blind. I did know some people and friends and family, and I called a lady that I was taking care of her father back home in Cuba. She is from my hometown, and she opened her house to me, and she was phenomenal. She helped me and she guided me initially.
You know, maybe I'm wrong, but I got the lifestyle between the U.S. and Cuba is got to be kind of different.
It is. It's a kind of 180 degrees contrast between each other. My town is a town that everybody, 700 people, we know each other. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of familiarity. There is a really sense of community, and people help each other a lot. My kids, growing up here, I studied my initial steps of medicine in Miami. My two older kids were born, and then we moved to Texas to do residency, and then to Washington, D.C., and then back to Miami. So we were constantly moving. We're back to Miami now for more than 10 years when I joined the Cleveland Clinic. And somehow there is a longing for home. I wasn't allowed to go back to Cuba, but in 2013, they lifted that prohibition, and I went back and I took my family over there. And my kids went over there, and they're fascinated with their roots, their town. They speak Spanish. We're talking Spanish with them. I want them to be multicultural and to learn to understand other people and other situations. So,
well, I was raised with a phrase, remember where you come from. Okay. Is your grandmother still alive?
No, she's not. She passed away years ago. She was 96 when she died.
And your grandmother's name was?
Juana.
Abuela Juana.
Abuela Juana.
Abuela Juana was known as the healer. Now you are a internationally recognized doctor. If Abuela Juana was sitting over there and she saw her little boy, her little grandson, what do you think she would say?
Oh boy. I know she's going to be very proud. She was a fascinating person. She very knowledgeable. She instigated in all of us the idea of curiosity in arts, curiosity in reading, pursuing knowledge. If she were to be sitting there, I think she'd be crying.
One of my favorite inspirational quotes is from Audrey Hepburn. She said, "To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow." Everyone has a story. Sometimes the stories are told through music. It's time for Jessop's Jukebox. Summertime is more than a season. It's the name of this next song, originally written by George Gershwin and performed by Billie Holiday way back in 1936.
Summertime, and the living is easy. Fish are jumping, and the catching is high. Oh, your daddy's rich, and your mind's good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings, you're gonna rise up singing. you'll spread your wings and you'll fly to the sky. But till the morning, there's nothing can harm you. With Daddy and Mammy standing by.
I'm known as the guy that wears hats on TV. Well, this is one of my favorites. It was made in the 1920s in Brooklyn by a hat shop called Ruby's. It's called the Ruby Green. If you ever find yourself in St. George, Utah, I recommend you stop by a restaurant called Aragosta. Tell Chef Imi that Doug Jessop sent you. Chef Imi, it's time for you to sign into Jessop's Journal.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure and my honor.
In this episode of Jessop's Journal, I'm with Chef Imi. I've followed this guy for quite a long time and want to see what he's up to now. So, Chef Imi, thank you so much for coming on Jessop's
Thank you
Journal.
very much for coming.
So I used to have a restaurant in Ivins. So now you're here in St. George. So number one, thank you very much. Beautiful place. Now, I'm going to tease you a little bit. You have a slight accent.
Yes. Oh, you're very nice. I have a very big size.
So where are you originally from?
I'm Hungarian.
Hungary. Okay, now I've been to Hungary, Hungary, I should say, a couple times. So where specifically in Hungary were you
Budapest, the capital. I was born in a country, but age of 2 years, my family moved into Budapest, and I grew up there.
from? Coming from the communist, era and everything, was there anything that kind of surprised you about coming to America? Something you didn't expect?
Not really, not really. The truth, the education in Hungary, even under the communist regime, was pretty high. So we knew a lot about the world, and we knew a lot about America. Maybe not by eyes, but by knowledge. So was only probably new, and that was a very good part. I felt a freedom, and I felt the security. I think the people who live here has to be appreciated and recognized that for the leaders who created, the city leaders to country leaders. You can walk without any trouble in the middle of the night. You can go to the school. You can let the kids go to the school. No problem, no trouble. That is priceless.
Yeah.
Seriously, especially this time of the life.
Well, now you talked about school and how you were training in culinary. So, was there food in your family, or how did you get interested in the culinary side of things?
It's hard to say. It wasn't anything. That was just a personal feeling. I always loved to see the restaurants. We had 2 restaurants nearby how I went to school, and we went to celebrate once in a while into a restaurant, and I love the food, and I love the atmosphere. Really cannot. After me in a family, numerous person became a restaurateur, but not before me. That was just a feeling, just came.
Now you have children that are in their 30s, and then you have some fairly young children. Are you passing on that knowledge and that kind of
I think so. I think so. 2 of my older boys grew up next to my feet in the restaurant. So they worked with me as a server. They are very nice kids, but the hard labor in the kitchen is, you got to be crazy to love that, and they choose on the floor, and also not working anymore in the restaurant business. One of them is working for Dell, another is just moved to Colorado, And restaurant is a tough job.
Tough job, yeah.
Only recommend to culinary for the people who really love that, because the effort and the knowledge what you put into it is not always equal with the money you can make. So most of the time, with the same knowledge and the same physical labor, you make almost everywhere a lot more money than a restaurant. Restaurant business is the lowest profit margin. But you know, it's never hurt me. Never hurt me. I never been looking for to be a billionaire. If they got punish me with some money, I'm not gonna run away. But never lead me. So what was my payback is creating an experience, bring a smile to my guest face, and that you have to have this feeling make you feel good to working at this environment.
You used to be a chef for Hungarian royalty? How does that work?
Yes, not just a royalty, even for like George Bush visited in Hungary or
Really?
a very high. Yes, after the certain level of education, even under the communist regime, they will check you, even FBI, check me all over, back and forth, because if you want to working for like that level, the Hungarian parliament or something like that, you have to be clean. You know,
Yeah, I guess
not a
that makes
criminal,
sense.
not
Sure.
a dangerous person. You know, I can poison someone. Think about it. George Bush is your guest, and I'm cooking or I'm serving for him. So I could make a big mess. You know?
Okay, gotcha.
And after that, when you are in this level, they just pass you here and here, and something happened. They just call you and get you there because they know you are knowing what you're doing, and you are responsible and reliable, and you are secure.
Do you remember what in the world you made for George Bush?
You know, George Bush was visiting in Hungary. That was, if I could remember, 1982 or three, something like that. I'm not 100% sure. And he had a gala dinner, and at that time I was working at the Hyatt Regency, and because the executive chef was world champion gold medalist, and you know, I always called the second place for a first loser. So because of because of that, I became a head server. You know?
Yeah. Okay.
Normally, by myself, I'm not really just a chef or street chef. My idol was in Hungary. His name is Károly Gundel. In English, you can say Gondel, but is Gundel. He was the biggest restaurateur in history. And the restaurateur is some who knows the back of the house and the front of the house, and plus also have a contact with the guest, like a chef owns restaurant, you know, and or a private chef. How can I more describe that? And I call myself restaurateur.
This is my journal. I mean, this is literally Jessop's journal, and you know, and they made one for you there too.
Thank you so much. You know, it is not just beautiful, because it's beautiful, but also a style, and also a nature. You know, how can I tell you? There's so much plastic around. You know, I really like the originality. You know, the real material, and something what is almost make me cry.
Yeah.
That paper is washed, hand washed paper. And I had a restaurant in Szentendre in the last time in Hungary before I moved to America, and one of my friends was an artist to make that, and was no in the beautiful leather. That was a different material, but the paper was the same. And he made me a big book and give it to me on the last day. And the last day, so Imi, when you go to America, have your guests to sign in the restaurant that for you, and you remember me. So that was a real touch. You know, when some people had one friend as a lucky man. If you have a lot, that's priceless.
Yeah.
And
Well,
thank God I have a lot of guests, mostly from the restaurant.
yeah.
Because I love my guests, they feel it, and they come back.
Chef Imi, thanks
you.
again for coming on Jessop's Journal.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for that beautiful gift. I'm gonna have a special space for that in my restaurant.
You see me every Sunday in the ABC4 News at 10 p.m. with a positive news feature called Utah Success Stories. A lot of my news stories are a combination of dirty jobs and how it's made. If you're a business owner with an interesting story to tell, put me to work. Now, these stories aren't for everybody. It's got to be a good fit for both sides. Full disclosure, we do charge a fee to cover production costs and social media exposure. For more information, email me at doug@dougjessup.com. Utah Success Stories. Everyone has a story. Objects with stories are treasures remembered. Objects with stories are treasures remembered. And this right here has got lots and lots of stories. So Brendan Fugel, what do we have here?
Here we have a 1685 Shakespeare folio. Now this is the first time that all of Shakespeare's collected works were printed. This is unique in that it has original medieval binding intact and these brass clasps. You have Shakespeare's comedies, histories, and tragedies. Never before printed in folio. It's a large presentation binding, one of the most important printed works in the English language that has impacted our culture, figures of speech, our language. It truly is a treasure.
When was this printed?
1685 London.
Wow. I love the smell of great food. Clear nasal spray helps me breathe better. I think that'll help you breathe better. I just wish this was smell-o-vision. I try to remind us all that, you know what? It's a small world out there. It's my honor to share powerful, positive, and inspirational stories every week on TV, as well as worldwide at jessopsjournal.com. Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other. With another entry into Jessop's Journal, I'm Doug Jessop.